My name is Matthew Hollingworth. I'm the Country Director of the World Food Programme here in South Sudan. Well, there's various challenges. We are 2 years into a very fragile peace agreement, which more or less is holding countrywide as a countrywide agreement. But we have violence taking place in every one of the 10 states and 3 administrative areas in this country. So there's different kinds of localized violence, subnational violence, intercommunal violence, all a mixture, and a great deal of politics involved in it too. And of course, right now, South Sudan is at a particular juncture where within its peace agreement, the one aspect of it which is due to take place in the next 1 year is an election. And that's supposed to be the culmination of this agreement. And so we're starting to see lots of electioneering, a lot of politicking ahead of that time. And clearly, when you have local violence, subnational violence, we have violence in areas where there are non-signatories to the peace agreement, it's all a big mixture. That makes it a very difficult place to work in. And of course, in a country as big as South Sudan, geographically, even if we're only around 12 million of population, there's a lot of specific issues in specific areas across the country. So it's all very different. You add to that the whole tribal side of things, it becomes very complicated. And the fact that South Sudan is a country that was forgotten for many, many years and has had so little development. There's so much isolation, there's so much inequity, there's so much marginalization. It's all a recipe for fragility and insecurity. Well, when you look at food security right now in South Sudan, more than 8.3 million people are severely food insecure. That's a phenomenal thought. That's 2/3 of the population of the country right now. Absolutely insane. And obviously part of that is the insecurity in the country. The impact of violence over a number of years, the impact of different levels of fighting over many years, and you add that to the shocks that they faced, droughts in parts of the country right now, 3 years of unprecedented flooding, and likely a 4th year of unprecedented flooding. The Sud has changed shape. The livelihoods of people, agro-pastoral people living in the Sud, on the banks of the Nile, are being entirely decimated in some cases and changed fundamentally forever in others. So you add all of that up to violence and insecurity. People are really struggling to see any way forward in a prosperous, peaceful new South Sudan. And of course, they haven't really seen the dividends of the countrywide peace over the last 2 years. Our key goal as the World Food Programme is to be out of here. You know, we've been here for too long. 6 decades working in a country and then going back to, I've just come from a community today in Uro, in one of the counties of Jonglei, where they don't have a school, they don't have a hospital, they don't have a primary healthcare clinic, there's no road that links them to other communities. They have no relationship with the government of this country, and some of that population relies on aid to help them through different parts of the year. Now that's got to be wrong 10 years after independence in what is an oil wealthy country. Not to just not have seen any big changes for communities is unacceptable. So what we want to do as the World Food Programme is help South Sudanese citizens actually get what they deserve in our own way. We're not going to be the answer to everything, but we can have a part in that story. And so obviously part of it is to change their environment, is to improve their environment, particularly around food security, so that they can make a living, that they can look after their families, have access to food that gives them a healthy lifestyle, but also because 95% of what people do in this country is related to agriculture in some form or another, or cattle keeping, herd keeping. We want to support them in food production as well. Best case scenario over the next 12 months, because we have to break this down into sort of digestible chunks. In the next 12 months, obviously, we want to support the country get to an election. Like I said, it's really important that South Sudanese citizens in little towns like Pieri, in little towns like Partet that I was in today, that they actually have a say on who governs them. This country's been independent for 10 years. They've yet to have a single election to vote for an MP, to vote for their members of parliament in the local assemblies, as well as the national assemblies, and their president and the ministers. So they deserve that. So we should help them to that end. But to get there, we have to try and ensure that there's some stability and that people can actually, flourish in their lives as opposed to depend on organizations like us. So immediately, that's the case. There's a huge humanitarian crisis taking place here right now, but we can't lose sort of sight of the fact that longer term, we need to be ensuring that we build resilience, we build towards development activities, and ultimately, we let people stand on their own 2 feet. But that's a much longer term window and a longer term project for us to follow on. Look, South Sudan's a country where the needs are so great across the whole spectrum of peace building, humanitarian development needs and gaps. We need everybody to work together. We need international organizations to be supporting the government writ large to become actually a government in more than just name, in more than just the capital, but also in villages around the country. We need, the IFIs, the international financial institutions, to look at how the government manages their business, their work, so that actually funds are channeled right down to the grassroots level. But we also need humanitarian organizations and development organizations that have relationships with communities to help communities build up as well, right from the village and not just in the big cities. To quote John Garang, the first leader of this country, we do need to take the cities, and in that I see it as the services that the cities have access to the village. And that right now is missing. So I think, the vision of this country 15 years ago, 16 years ago, is just as relevant today as it was then, and we have a small part to play in that.